The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
Hello, I'm Colonie Town Judge Peter Crummey, and welcome to Benchmark. We'll explore a variety of issues involving our legal system, our justice system, and how they intersect with the citizens of the town of Colonie. Today, we are truly fortunate to have as our guest Michael Breslin. Many of us recall Michael Breslin as our Albany County Executive for 17 years. Mike Breslin, though, also practiced law for a number of years here in the city of Albany and currently is involved in a variety of community projects, and we're very fortunate to have Mike with us today. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks for the introduction, Peter. I'm happy to be here.
We are so happy to have you here, and of course we've enjoyed Judge Tom Breslin here and Senator Neil Breslin as well, and we're just so happy to have you join us as well. And as you know, Mike, a half-hour show could not do justice to the life and times of Mike Breslin. Your storied career is second to none in the county.
Kind.
And obviously, many of us know you graduated from Vincentian Institute, president of your class, also received the Tom McCann Award for being the scholar football player throughout the area at the time, and on to West Point after that, and then military service, and then entering law school, being editor of the Law Review at your law school, and then coming back to Albany to practice, and we're all very fortunate that you did, and then ultimately serving as our county executive as well. Mike, tell me the early days, VI, you were a VI student, and what brought you to West Point? How did you start there?
I was blessed to grow up, one, with a wonderful family. I'm one of 6 kids. And I lived right next to the grade school, the VI grade school I went to, and just down a block to the high school. I still go to lunch. In fact, I had lunch yesterday with, I think, 14 or 15 of my classmates, so we regularly do that. We didn't have TV. We were the last people to get TV. We didn't have a car, but I had everything I ever needed as a kid. And I got to West Point, actually they contacted me. The first guy when I went down there was Colonel Red Blake, who was the longtime distinguished football coach there. I became a scrubini playing football, and I was one of those guys that set up and knock down and get up again, Breslin, and I did. And I was blessed to be able to play intercollegiate baseball, basketball, and football. On graduation, I went to the 82nd Airborne Division for 3 years. Then I taught counterinsurgency in Latin America before I went to Vietnam in 1967 and 68. And it gave me a view of life that there are certain things that are very important, and there are other things that aren't so important. And we've got to focus on the important things, and make sure you don't lose sight of the little things, because they can creep up on you too, but really look at the important things. That whenever you do something, do it for the right reason, be totally honest, not just don't lie. When someone asks you something, give them the full, absolute truth that you would want them to give to you. And make sure that you look for people of like mind, who have the same values, who are looking for the same thing. I think that we did a lot of great things in county government, for example. I say we because after I assembled the team that we went through those many years with, it was a matter of I didn't so much do it as much as we did it. And I got good people who would do the right thing, and more often than not, the critical good decisions I made weren't my idea. It was someone else who said, Mike, what about this? We'd go do it, and off we would go.
Well, and there's no question that you accomplished so many things on behalf of the citizens of the county of Albany, and of course leaders are defined by those around them. and you put together a cabinet to see through the needs of the county when you were serving in that way. And you continued to be humble and modest, which has always been your hallmark, and about the accomplishments. And you talked about early on after West Point and being directed into the 82nd Airborne, and then completing a Ranger school, and then being, you said that you actually were sent into South America to teach officers about counterinsurgency practices. But that meant that you had to learn Spanish first. Is that correct? That
is correct.
Right.
And it's one of the things I really feel bad about, that I was actually speaking for hours at a time in Spanish. I've lost it because I don't have that much opportunity to use it, and I haven't forced myself to do it. I can still read it well and make a presentation, and I throughout my time as county executive, when I met with Hispanic Outreach and the other Latin groups, with a prepared script, I could really make a presentation that they knew exactly where I was coming from.
Well, being chosen as a representative of the United States government to go into other countries and to teach them what you knew, and to do it in their language and the vernacular of the country, is obviously they had great faith and confidence in your capacity to communicate, even using another language. That's very powerful, and certainly you understate that, but it has to be a great credit to your capacity. And as you move forward after that, ultimately you did find your way in your 11 years of military service and 8.5 years or so on hands-on action, including into Vietnam. And at the high point, you were brought into Vietnam in 1967, 68, when it was certainly considered by many historians to be the most active setting that the war provided at the time. Anything you want to tell us about what you saw and how it impacted you, and how you've taken those lessons and brought them to the rest of your life?
Well, I think that a lot of people at that time were at a loss to explain what were we doing there. But reading back, and now in hindsight, and then reading McNamara and others, it's pretty clear that most people who knew anything about it realized we got to get out of here in 1967 or 68. And yet we went on for how many more years, with how many more tens of thousands of lives of American soldiers and Marines. And to what end? And I liken it to today, we're doing so many things that are military, and I have to ask, to what end? As someone has said, a number of people have said, we can't kill our way out of the disorder in the Middle East. Because every time we try, we get to the point where we're going to make more enemies than we're going to kill. If you just want to use math.
Right.
And it's very difficult for us to go in and say, here's what we're going to do to get you democracy, or to get whatever it is we think you need, whoever you are, whatever your country or your group or your religion. And if we can't allow you the space to do what you need to do, and ideally we'll do it in a way that is consistent with what we want to happen, it's not going to work. And we continuously get between in our country today. Are we going to lead from behind, or are we going to go invade them and bomb them, and we can bomb them? Oh no, we can't bomb them, only we need to put boots on the ground. The more that we try to control that area with military power, not that we don't need military power, but to actually exercise it and use it to kill people, and get back into that frame of mind we had in Vietnam, essentially of a body count. It doesn't work. We need to have a more nuanced approach. We need to make sure that we take into consideration where all of these people have come from, including their religion, including where were those little groups of people back before they cut them all up and rearranged them after the world wars. It's not a simple thing. And I don't think it's something that we as a country are going to be able to control totally. Do we need to be participant? Yes. Do we need to be leaders? Yes. But we can't do it ourselves.
Right. And as you said, sometimes essentially what can happen is that we can create a new disorder.
Yeah.
We think we're extinguishing a disorder, and we create a new one.
Right. I mean, everyone today, virtually everyone agrees that we never should have gone into Iraq. And surely, if you went into Iraq, you shouldn't have gone into Iraq, then disband the army, disband the military, and expect somehow there's going to be organization, stability, control, security.
Right.
All those things are out the window.
Right.
Immediately. And you can't create any kind of a positive situation without those things.
Well, Michael, you served our country in so many ways there, and left, I believe, honorably discharged as a major. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was a major when I got out.
Yeah, and then from there went to law school, University of Toledo Law. Yep. And became, of course, the editor of the Law Review, which is the highest ranking position typically a student can have in a law school, and there's Mike Breslin at the top of that. And you chose to come back to Albany to start practice. Why did you do that?
It's where I grew up.
Yeah.
It's where I knew people, where I knew those things that were important to me, they were here.
Right.
I was blessed to get an opportunity to spend a year clerking at the appellate division, which gave me an opportunity to look around to see where I'd like to go. And I spent roughly a decade at DeGraff, Foy, Conway, Hill, Davis, and Mealy, which is one of the preeminent firms here, before my brothers Neil, Tom, and I got together and formed Breslin, Breslin, and Breslin.
And you and I have spoken about the nature of the practice over the years, and as a practicing lawyer, and how it appeared at the time, and the nature of your practice then, and how you see it now. And we found ourselves on a daily basis, I would suppose, early on in the courthouse all the time. The courthouse was abuzz with special term and other activities that lawyers were doing right in the courthouse, being the center of it all. And I've had some guests here suggest that it's changed a little bit now. Many cases are decided on papers only. There's no oral arguments in many. Certainly not. There's no such thing as a special term anymore. But you were certainly recognized by the court system to be able to enjoy an appellate division appointment as a young lawyer is really one of the most cherished and sought after positions that a young law school graduate can have. And right away you were recognized and brought into there. And then, yes, as you said, I wholeheartedly agree that at the time that you were engaged, you were employed by certainly one of the most influential and comprehensive law firms in the county of Albany. During that time, and what was the nature of your practice as a young lawyer in private practice with DeGraff Foy?
I was doing mostly defense work, negligence cases, and sometimes representing corporate clients and individual clients. It wasn't that big that everyone was totally specialized, but more than anything, I did negligence defense work.
And then ultimately, you formed a firm with your brothers, Judge Tom Breslin and Senator Neil Breslin. In the time that you were actively practicing private practice, did you see the practice of law change, and do you see that it's changed again from your viewpoint now?
Well, I saw that it changed from something that was much more personal, much less confrontational, in the sense that I don't trust you and you don't have to trust me. There was a real sense of trust and commitment to doing the right thing, and not so much winning. I don't mean to say you didn't try and win, because
Right.
our whole rule of law is based on the notion that everyone presents their best case and the best case shall win.
Yes.
But I saw also the burgeoning numbers of issues that are going through the court system, the number of cases. I don't think it's really in our best interest to have those burgeoning numbers. Now, in the ideal, without looking at facts, people say, well, you give everyone a chance to go up to the courthouse and be heard and all the rest. And people speak of the magnificent new courthouse, which we redid for how many hundreds of millions of dollars, and that they have their opportunity to go see that. Well, I'd like to think that they don't have to get to that point where they need that opportunity, that there be other ways of resolving those disputes, because surely we didn't have that number of disputes before.
Right.
I know life is more complicated. I can remember the little street I grew up on. There weren't nearly as many cars, and how many people do you see with car and automobile offenses that go through town court? And that normally is going to grow. But if we had a system somehow that they could routinely pay off whatever it is and have their penalty imposed without court, I mean, you can do that, but if there were a system that it could go through more quickly, it'd be to our benefit.
Well, I do. I know that oftentimes I'll arrive at the courthouse and it's standing room only here in Colonie, and it's really a big city court working off of a footprint that was created some 60 years ago, and it really can't respond, in my opinion, fairly to the litigants in its current construction, and sadly it would require more time. People do come to the courthouse to have the court make decisions sometimes for them in civil matters that they can't do themselves or find that they're unable to do. And then, of course, the criminal caseload continues to be very involved and intricate. In many ways, and the Colonie Court is now the 22nd busiest criminal court in the state of New York, working in a part-time basis, which I don't think that it's right, and I don't think it's fair to the litigants, and it needs to be altered to meet the demand. And your point is, why do we have a demand? What is it going on? And in that way, and oftentimes I feel the best courtroom's an empty one, because that means we don't have to resolve all of these issues. But every time we have a court session, and now we have court sessions 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Colonie Court.
Yep.
And I believe there should be a seventh. I think we should have court every day there.
I don't mean to overly simplify things, but I know that you don't know right now the cases that are going to be seen the next time you go to the courtroom. But after going through them, you will say 9 out of 10 of them can be resolved like that.
Right.
Now, one of your biggest jobs is to identify which they are.
Right.
And have the public, if they could recognize that and the whole rest of the system, then there wouldn't be that need. But we have this notion of, I don't mean that people shouldn't have the right to go to court, but it shouldn't be almost routinely the place you go to have everything resolved. There should be other ways of resolving it. I don't know why it is so many more, it seems to me, cases, even traffic violations and the like, come into the courtroom that as soon as you look at it, what's going to happen. And the town attorney knows. And the lawyer who's representing probably knows. What are we doing here?
Right.
We've got to make sure that we get a system that will operate more efficiently, will weed out those things at a lower level.
Well, I'm so happy that you continue to lend your ideas and background and experience even today. And we'll touch on it in a few minutes. You're a member of the Indigent Legal Services Commission, a statewide commission working on ways to ensure counsel is present for litigants who are otherwise unrepresented at very important times in the process, even arraignment.
Right.
in that, and so your viewpoints are well taken there, and we read about your work from time to time in not only in law journals and state magistrates association magazines and the like, and it continues to be an ongoing process. But before you got there, ultimately at some point you were asked to serve as the Albany County Executive. If I recall right, it's possible Mike Hoblock was the Albany County Executive, and then he left to run for Senate, I think.
And Mike had just been elected to the state Senate. Yep. And it was December 15th of that year,
right.
The legislature who got to appoint that first year of my tenure asked me to do it.
Right.
And so on 2 weeks' notice, I became the county executive.
Well, I remember I was one of those sitting as a legislator representing a portion of Colonie, and you went on to continue to serve and to win election a number of times, 4 times subsequent to that, on your own motion for 4-year terms. And Mike, looking back at your 17 years as Albany County Executive, which is the longest tenured Albany County Executive we've ever had to this point, did you see that change over time, the way it was when you started and the way you left county government when you did not seek re-election?
Yeah, I'm very proud of the things that we were able to do. And I say we. I was able to get a magnificent number of people who came to work directly for me, and over the course of my time get others into certain key positions in other departments who made magnificent changes in the way we did things, and in many instances just carried on the way they had been going. I know that one of the biggest things that we really focused on was children's services, children and family services. They were parts of the probation system, of social services, of mental health. We put all of the children and family services together so that we weren't talking about, oh, this is a child that has a mental health problem, or this is a child who's got this. This is a child that may have problems, and if the child has a problem, a member of the family, look at the other members of the family. They're more likely to have the same problem than others, and if we're going to solve this child's problem, we need to solve it as a family. And we need to solve it in some way other than just coming into Albany County government or going through the criminal justice system. We need to work in concert with many not-for-profits and other groups throughout our community that can address the problems of these children. We did that, and soon there were places all over the state that were trying to copy the initiative that we started here. That is to say, focusing on individual children and on families to get them to a better place. When I walked in, there was old CRT terminals all over the place. No one was using them. The whole information technology system was decades older than it should have been. Yeah. We put a whole new system in place. We got some magnificent people to do it. We had a training lab that we actually made it available to towns and villages and cities throughout the community, and they used it to train their people. We actually created new space for almost every individual department within county government. Social services, reconditioned space up on Washington Avenue across from the Albany Library. Probation and public defender down on South Pearl Street. We built family courts. The whole system, a court system, had a plan that had been it was overdue by like 2 decades. And
I recall.
I needed to move, and I recognized that it was a very difficult task, and it was. It was very difficult, and there was so many oars in the water. In Democrat, Republican, the judicial system, the neighborhood, the zoning, and how are you going to get all of the other actors who go in and out of the court together? So we took it one step at a time, and we ultimately got there.
Well, and it's done, and it's certainly a beautiful spot. I think originally built in 1915, and I can tell you it's probably a model now for many other counties as we look forward, because the project is done, and certainly it's a beautiful building. The nature of our practice has changed, though, that sometimes I find that sometimes it seems like there's less attorneys or bodies in the building now for a variety of reasons, and maybe because there's no special terms anymore, or certainly fewer oral arguments, if any. Everything's submitted on papers. Soon they'll fully embrace electronic. I think it's already started in New York, but the federal system is totally electric in the filing of papers.
Yeah.
And the rooms that we still need, I suppose, accommodate the trials, which are a very important part of our Constitution and our judicial system. But oftentimes, cases are fortunately closed out short of trial, just because of the time it takes for the citizens and the court to engage in a protracted trial. And we might find sometimes that we have rooms available now that...
Well, I think really the better the judicial system operates, the more it defines what's going to happen when you put issues in front of it. Now, will there be always a certain number or percentage of changing issues or changing approaches or disputed facts? Yes. But if everyone gets the notion that this is what's right and this is what's wrong, this is what's compensable, this is not, and there comes more agreement, then cases can either, one, not be brought, or if they are brought, resolved without a trial. And through depositions and other discovery, a lot of them are refined to the point where you can settle them. And that's a good thing.
Right.
And I think that I'm aware that there are some abuses of arbitration clauses where people are forced into arbitration instead of getting into the judicial process. But there are so many other times where if you can have a matter that goes in front of a mediator or an arbitrator and there is an opportunity to be heard, you can more often than not come to a consensual resolution as all of the facts are presented and everyone sees what both sides are saying. Because there's always an element of almost every dispute. If you're going all the way to trial, that never actually sees the light of day until the trial itself. But if you go through a mediation, arbitration, or other alternative process, you can get there quicker.
Yeah, well, that's true, and I think that you're certainly understating the accomplishments, many other accomplishments that occurred during your tenure as a county executive for that period of time, and certainly you left a mark on how it proceeds, and there was a lot of change in the 90s that you and I both believe needed to come to that government at that time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I walked in I started having all of the human services meet together. And I remember one of the then commissioners saying, "Why would we do that?" I mean, like, we are health and we'll do what the health department of the state tells us, and we'll do that. Why do we need to talk to social services or mental health? Mm-hmm. Well, as I indicated before when I talk about the children's services, so often the problem is not as simply defined as a health problem, but there is interplay, and sometimes there are solutions that need other participation. And sometimes there's a bright idea that someone else in a similar situation has, and if you talk and discuss it, you get to a better place. So we started having cluster meetings, and it was eye-opening to realize that, oh, you're doing that. Yeah, we can do this. Maybe together we can do it even better. And as I said before or implied, it wasn't so much Mike Breslin said, you're going to have to do this, as much as I got the right people together and got them working and developing ideas, and then latching onto the right ones and pushing it forward. And a lot of times, as you know, I'm not pointing at you as a legislator, but sometimes
It's
the
okay, I was in
legislature could be ornery, and you would say to yourself, we've got to go do this. We've recently gone through an effort at modifying county government again. Now, I don't see how you justify 39 members of a legislature for a county the size of Albany.
Well,
it's outrageous.
I don't disagree. I proposed legislation in 1995 to right-size that legislature.
But each person who's a legislator will say, gee, I wonder if he's aiming at me. And even if he isn't, when they come down to it, they may get my seat. Where will I be? Wow. And there's other such parochial interests that get in the way of looking at what is the actual need and how can we best serve it to get representation on a meaningful basis so appropriate issues are raised, understood, and resolved.
Mike, today you continue to serve the citizens of the state of New York and Albany County, and we've mentioned the Commission on Indigent Legal Services. I know you're also teaching down at the Rockefeller College. Could you just, in a few words, tell us about the Commission on Indigent Legal Services and what you'd like to see there?
Well, the Commission on Indigent Legal Services was created by statute, and the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals, Judge Lippman, and soon to be Judge Fiore, who will be, I assume, approved, meets on a regular basis to chart new directions where we can get indigent legal services out to those most appropriate places where it's most needed. The focus over the last several years is, one, diminishing the caseloads and the overwhelming burden on so few defense lawyers around the state. Looking at caseloads and making sure that we have a better way of serving those indigent people who come before the criminal justice system. And one of the key points is at first arraignment, that there be a legal representation so that the person will, on the question of bail, have representation. On the question of a possibility of an immediate resolution because you can find it out quickly, you could even resolve the case before anyone has to go to bail. But if you don't, if you don't have the representation at the initial arraignment, the case may take a whole different course, and you may have an individual who ultimately is not guilty, who's essentially serving a sentence because he doesn't have enough money to get out. And the question of him getting it out or whether there should be bail at all won't have been raised. So there's been a focus on doing that, and we need to make sure that as we go through that there are resources so that when we read about it every day, about people who are improperly convicted, about people who, whether they're convicted or not, who sit in a jail because no one has appropriately represented them, no one has pushed their case, presented the issues in front of a court so that it can be resolved. And we can do a better job at that. And I think that there needs to be some court reorganization. The commission has found this guy named Bill Leahy, who came from Massachusetts, who's been doing this for years, and he's been a tremendous breath of fresh air and has organized a lot around the state so that with not insignificant, but not huge numbers of resources, gotten together so that we do things more efficiently. One of the most recent initiatives, for example, is so that for defense lawyers, there will be regional bases where there are resources available for expert testimony, for files on briefs, for appeals, that there's this backup resources that can be used on a collective basis. As you and I talked earlier, there needs to be a focus on how can the court system make it such that you and local attorneys and defense attorneys don't have to go around each to their court on a basis, could be every night at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
But if we can schedule it so there's a central point and one person can do the representation,
Right.
Or as you suggested, you can do these video arraignments.
Right.
We put the system in Albany County Courthouse, but it's hardly ever used. There's a resistance to change.
Oh, believe
but
me.
we need to change.
Try the judicial branch.
And we can do it better. One of the things that I was in, not simply as an attorney on the Indigent Legal Services, but as a former county executive. Actually, I was in as a county executive. I've been in that long. How much is this going to cost?
Right.
And what's the most cost-effective way of doing this?
Right.
And how can we do perhaps something on a regional basis that otherwise is done on a county by county or a town by town or city by city,
Right.
Which obviously is going to be more expensive and less efficient?
Well, the Colonie bench certainly concurs with the premise that it's important to have counsel available even at arraignment, and we're working with our own police department and town board to get more of that accomplished by using the correctional facility as an overnight hold, and your brother Neil worked with me on getting that legislation done, so that when they do appear in the courthouse, there's an attorney with them at that point. And we have that implemented over the weekends, but I believe it should be every day. And so we're taking it as we can with the limited powers that we have. Sometimes I wish the judicial branch could make more of its own administrative decisions, but of course we need a legislative body like the town board to work with us in that. But I think it's vital and it's important, and we're putting the steps in place. And Sheriff Apple's been working with me on the connectivity too, if we can utilize video arraignment, because it's of utmost importance that the defendant's rights are paramount to anybody else's, and what is quickest for them to get access to court, access to justice. And if they choose to access a judge through video from the correctional facility and have bail set, reasonable bail set, or released on their own recognizance, that can be done quickly, efficiently, and without the transport, which would delay their opportunity to get to a judge. I don't want to delay it. I want to expedite access to a judge. And we'll keep at it as long as we're asked to do serve by the Colonie town residents. And Michael, I can tell you, as I started at the beginning, of course, a half hour can do no justice to the life and times of Michael Breslin. And as we'll have to have you back here again on numerous occasions in order to get into any one of the topics that we just touched on today. And of course, the town residents know what the county residents know, that when historians come to look at the history of Albany County between 1950 and 2030 or so, there'll be an entire chapter dedicated to the Breslins. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Well, we're very happy that you came, Michael.
And if I could have a final note, you mentioned before about the coming together to get people their just representation in criminal matters. Right. We need to have a big round table, and not only you as the judge in Colonie, but the judges in all of the towns around here, and the higher ups in the judicial system that will have the power that restrict you from doing certain things that you would like to do, and the legislature. Either one would be sitting to grant you the power, or just release it so that you can do what you know is the best thing. And there's going to be defense attorneys, and there's going to be district attorneys, and there's going to be cops. But once you get the solution from 8 or 10 of them, then the last guy will say, yeah, but what about me? And you got to do this. You got to get them all together, or it's not going to work.
Well, certainly your vision and your leadership has accomplished so many things already in Albany County, and on behalf of the state of New York, and we're thrilled you're continuing to work on some of these issues that benefit all of us and the court system as well. And thank you, Michael, for being with us today. I'm Colonie Town Judge Peter Crummey, and thank you for joining me on Benchmark.